welcome back to Weekend Wisdom on Nightlight Astrology. Your fearless co-hosts have returned for another episode, this time looking back at Saturn's regression into Pisces. Now, we've been here before, right, guys? I'm Whitney Kranz.
I'm Alex Amorosi. Sorry, I messed it up.
I definitely messed it up. Oh, sorry. Say it again.
I'm Alex Amorosi.
And I'm Alexandra Blair.
And here we are, your team, ready to give you the astrology news, one step at a time. We are here thanks to Adam Elenbaas and Nightlight Astrology. Adam has all sorts of juicy offerings on nightlightastrology.com. There's a retreat. We've got great monthly webinars, courses, all of the things. So head on over there and let's jump into it, guys. So I said before we started cracking up, I know we'll like that. I said that we've been here before, right? This is Saturn's last dance in Pisces. Credit to Alexandra for that beautiful title. Now, the difference though, right, is that this time Jupiter is dignifying Saturn from its improved place in Cancer, right? So let's talk about what this journey looks like, because it's the last leg of Saturn's journey here in Pisces. We know that for quite a few months here, Saturn has been in Aries, but Saturn re-entered Pisces on September 1st in retrograde motion. And this is such an important part of the zodiac, right? Where we have the last degrees of Pisces and the first degrees of Aries, because this is where the zodiac sort of resets itself, right? Pisces as the last sign and Aries as the first sign, right? Like Aries is this sort of fresh start for Saturn, but it's almost like Saturn's not quite ready for the change, right? It's almost as if Saturn and Neptune together was like this slightly premature birth, right? And this is sort of present, this symbolism is present as we look forward, because we know that soon after Saturn and Neptune enter Aries come February, they're going to conjoin. This sort of lead up moment will be perfected in February. So what's going on here with Saturn back in Pisces? I'm seeing, if we use sort of that birth metaphor, it's almost like going back into the comfort of the womb, the waters of incubation, right? To sort of remake those Saturnian lessons. So I think what's on all of our minds right now, personally and collectively, we can think about it. What work does Saturn have left to do in Pisces? Or in following that metaphor, what's incubating right now, right? Like if we take the symbolism of Pisces, are we incubating how we grow in our belief and our spirituality? Are we incubating in our, growth and maturity and how we stretch, right? With Saturn and Jupiter configured in this trine, it has this sort of stretching presence that we see, right? Is that in Pisces about our mind and our mental resolve? These are the things that I'm thinking about as Saturn regresses into Pisces. What do you all think?
Yeah, that's a great point, Whitney. I think that everybody has a Pisces part of their chart, right? So whether or not you have planets in Pisces, everybody's got a Saturn. So Saturn coming through Pisces is doing something to your Saturn, and it's going through that Pisces area. And it's been there since March 2023. And it's honestly been pretty tough going through from March 2023. We had Saturn squaring Jupiter, and Jupiter was in detriment. We've had some other stuff going on with Saturn and with Pisces that has felt more of the classic Saturnian lessons, roadblocks, restrictions, the tough teacher. Now Saturn is coming back with an exalted Jupiter forming up a trine, and there's going to be essentially 3 straight months, October through December, of water trines where Saturn is trining Jupiter. We have the Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Venus all coming through Scorpio. In fact, Mercury actually does a retrograde from early Sagittarius back into late Scorpio, keeping that water trine alive. So this is almost like Saturn at its kindest, in my opinion. Like, this is a really, really helpful Saturn that is receiving a trine from an exalted ruler of Pisces, Jupiter, as you mentioned. This is the friendliest Saturn has been throughout Pisces, including even, I think, at this Pisces lunar eclipse that just recently happened. Saturn is almost like, okay, I hazed you. I was mean to you, but now I'd like to offer you a hand up and let's actually do it. All right, I respect you because you took it from me. Like, you took all this tough stuff. Like, let's actually be friends and let's make something really productive out of this. I feel like this last period, I've been talking to a lot of friends and clients and just being like, this is a really good time for whatever you should have finished with Saturn and Pisces, wherever you're at in that Saturn cycle, which we can come back and talk about a little bit. But whatever that last little thing you need to do is, this is the most friendly time you're going to have to do it. And you don't want to carry it into your next phase of the Saturn cycle. So you definitely want to handle it with these beautiful, life-supportive water trines.
This is really beautiful, you guys, because I think that I love that this is the most supportive time, and I agree. It's just by Jupiter's dignity and relationship to Saturn right now, and his ability to host him in such a really powerful way is so nice. And I think, Saturn is asking us for excellence always, right? It's like, and also where you're trying to wiggle out of doing something the right way and the mature way and the way with integrity. I think that's something we've mentioned in previous episodes about this idea of, especially these eclipses, being in integrity with yourself. And I think something interesting to watch in this last dance of Saturn and Pisces is where you're trying to wiggle out of that. Even in little ways, just being like, well, it's not actually that bad if I do it like this, because I'll just make up for it here, try here. Like, watch for that voice, because Saturn is going to be like standing there with like tapping its foot, being like, really? Really? We're going to do that again? Do we always know where that road winds up? Saturn loves you by putting you in a difficult box and then recognizing that you can get out of that box. And when you do, poof, it's gone. But this is I think that last sort of dance, which I just really love. I just love that phrase so much, of don't try to worm out of it now. Don't try to go back to being some way that didn't really work for you, however tempting it may look. And I think sometimes, with Pisces particularly, it's easy to put on nostalgic rose-colored glasses and kind of be like, well, it's nice, it's a little bit, it's like, no, none of that. Stay with yourself and stay in integrity with yourself, because I think that, it's important to remember that when Saturn's box or Saturn's lessons or Saturn's experiences are moved through, you're done. That's it. You generally don't have to go back through something like that again when you really, really get it, because it's so thorough. So give yourself the opportunity to do that in these next 4 months.
I love that you're speaking to integrity and that we're already talking about all of this work and beautiful creative juice that is to come in these water trines, right? Now, I just also think, like you said, Alex, Saturn says, do the work, right? Saturn is back here because we didn't finish our work. It's time to finish, right? Because when we do that, it's like we say, Saturn makes things age like fine wine. There is optimism on the other side, right? When we do that work. So what do you guys think about if we sort of talk chronologically? I know right now at this point in the month, we're smack dab in eclipse season. We've got a Pisces, I believe we have a Pisces eclipse behind us, depending on when this episode airs. And and a Virgo eclipse in front of us. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time here on eclipse season and the work of Saturn, right? Only because we've done 4 episodes about eclipse season already. I think we're already a little bit over it, right? And then I think if we dive into sort of what happens with those water trines when we enter November, that will feel really good. So just, I guess I can start like in terms of the way Saturn is implicated throughout eclipse season. We know it is, I would say, supporting or has supported the Pisces eclipse, right? That we're able to understand the different levels of work, right? There's this thing about Pisces where Pisces is like striving for transcendence and the next level, right? But is also forced to sort of reckon with humanity or reckon with current circumstance. And I think that this is really present right now in this eclipse, and also just the symbolism that Saturn is back here, right? Because we want to transcend, we want to be through, we want to be done with the work, but we're not done yet, you know? That's what Pisces is saying, right? But then as we get to our Virgo eclipse, this slightly spooky, we have said, anaretic eclipse, partial solar eclipse in Virgo, right? Saturn is directly opposite that, 28 degrees of Pisces. And I think this looks like where Saturn is, yes, we're trying to stretch here, but this is where we feel more of that confinement of Saturn, where Saturn is asking us to shed, right, in order to move forward. It's like what happens in the process of expansions and contractions, right? It's like this movement back and forth, and that's what I'm seeing here. Tell me what you guys are thinking about Saturn throughout the eclipse window here.
I feel like Saturn is really providing some wisdom for us from the Pisces area of things. Again, we talk about this being the kindest spot Saturn's been in. That's true, and that's developing over the fall and winter. But it really feels more patient, more supportive, more like a mentor because of that trine from Jupiter, which Jupiter is also kind of a mentor. And so to have Jupiter exalted is really helpful there. Definitely the Virgo eclipse, I still think that Saturn is helping more than it's hurting there. I agree that it's spooky. I agree that, I just recorded horoscopes for that eclipse on my show, and I called them suck it up horoscopes, because that's what that eclipse really is feeling like to me. But it feels like Saturn is actually offering some contrary wisdom. It's like saying, hey, you've learned a lot in this Pisces area of your chart. Could you use some of this material and some of this wisdom to handle this Virgo stuff that's coming up? So for me, Saturn feels like it's a much more supportive place than it has been, even though I do think that's maybe the most difficult of those eclipses in Virgo.
Yeah, I think, it reminds me of, it kind of keeps bringing me back to, like, what are you going to do? Like, there's going to be probably a point where you come to over the next couple weeks, or during this eclipse. I'm trying to get ahead of recording schedules to you guys, so when
as we
comes
say,
out.
our space-time continuum we're in this recording.
Yeah, in
bubble.
the space as we warp space and time here. But I feel like there will probably be some familiar choices and familiar ways that will come up here that you make choices that will feel like, do I really want to do that again? And Saturn will sit there and be like, you can. You have free will. You can do whatever you want. But you might have to be, the wiser, more mature, less fun choice usually is the part where Saturn kind of goes, we're opening the gate. We're opening the gate, because Saturn to me is always where you're leveling up in some way. It's asking you to level up and mature, individualize in some way. And I think that it can be very easy to justify or rationalize why you're just like, well, it's okay. It's like, it's really just once. It's really just this. And Saturn's going to be like, but you've come so far. You're almost there. Like, you're literally almost there. What if you just do, like, the suck it up I love,
so
Alexandra. It's like, what if you just suck it up right now? Just right now. And get through this. And on the other side of that is probably something more expansive. But I think that, like, the desire, you know, especially with a Virgo eclipse, right? The desire to get it correct is not a bad thing. Perfect doesn't exist, but getting it correct for you. There's something on the other side of that will probably feel like you've leveled up in some way.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what I'm hearing in, like, especially the suck it up nature, right, is like Saturn's here providing a contradiction to this Virgo eclipse, but it's like, it's a helpful contradiction, right? Because we've talked about how, you know, Virgo can be overly self-critical, right? And so if we're feeling those feelings throughout this eclipse, Saturn is like that contradiction. Like, but wait, yes, like, okay, there's this work here, but this work is going to help you get out of that hole that you can't see out of, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, excuse me, like, Alex, you were talking about Saturn in a way that kind of reminded me of some of my favorite things to think about with Saturn is that we often think about Saturn as, I mentioned earlier, roadblocks, friction, no's. It can be those things. But more often than not, I find that when I'm getting a lot of no's, it's because I'm actually resisting Saturn. Usually if I'm doing what Saturn wants, I'm not getting no's. I'm actually getting a lot of yeses, or maybe a door closed but a window's open, or another escape route I didn't even consider that's leading to something even better. I feel like I get the no's when I'm giving no's, when I am resisting what Saturn's trying to teach. And so now I try to think more often about Saturn as not just those roadblocks, but it's actually the work. And then it's also the workout that creates the appetite for more work. It's like all of these things. It's this beautiful cycle of getting yourself stronger, being hungry for harder challenges, and then kind of summoning up yourself to rise to that occasion too. It's all of that. It's the entire process. And that's part of what I love about, you know, tracking the Saturn cycles. And so that's something everybody can think about as we talk about Saturn coming back into Aries, is like, where are you in your Saturn cycle? You know, I kind of subscribe to like the Dane Rudhyar, like opening square, the full moon moment, the opposition, the closing square, and locating yourself there and trying to see what Saturn's guiding you towards can be really helpful.
This brings me to a story that I think will help illustrate the points we're bringing up here.
Story time with Alex.
A very Saturn teacher. Story time. Let's go back, way back to when I was in high school, which is getting further and further into the rearview mirror now. I got, for my senior year English teacher, you know, you guys, you know, when you were in high school and you told your friends who you got for a certain subject, they're like, oh no, you got the crusher, you got the killer, you got the assassin. You know what? I got the crusher, the killer, and the assassin. Like, she was no bullshit. She wouldn't tolerate behaviorally and academically. Like, there was nothing. She didn't let you get by with anything. And I remember there was one time where I had to do an oral report. I think it was on Ode to a Nightingale. And I didn't even read the poem. I was just like, I'll just like smile and do my Leo charmy thing and I'll be fine. Like, it'll just work, whatever. And this was...
You didn't do the work.
You can already tell this is not the birth. I did not do the work. Oh no. I'm like, I don't know, I'll just skim over it and it'll be fine. And I'll just talk about it and, you know, pontificate and whatever. So I get up in front of the whole class and I read, because you had to read the poem out loud first. So I read the poem to the bottom of the page. And then I just start talking about, you know, Ode to a Nightingale. Like, I have any idea what I'm talking about. You know, my wonderful Jupiter youthful arrogance coming out here. And my best friend is sitting in the back row, and he keeps making a motion, like, turn the page. He's going, like, and I can see the eyes in the room starting to dart around. And he's like, turn the page, dumbass, turn the page. And I'm like, and I'm starting to realize what's happening. And she's just sitting in the second row, looking at me, shaking her head like this. And I was like, she just goes, just stop. Do this again tomorrow. Because it's clear that you have no idea what you're talking about. You know, and I was like, you know, but what she said was, I don't think this is the type of work you really want to do. And I've always remembered that when I start to bullshit, because just having Mercury in Sagittarius, that's a tendency that can start to happen sometimes. And when I start to bullshit, or, I'm going to start talking about something I don't really know what I'm talking about, I don't think this is the work you really want to do. And that actually has become one of my favorite poems to this day. And it was something about like, treat this with respect, treat yourself with respect, treat the art with respect. And no, I'm not going to let you just get away with this because this is the last semester of senior year and you don't want to do any work. Like you're going to do this work and you're going to understand this. And to this day, I still use things, not just things she said, but like aspects of what I learned about writing and grammar and all this stuff. I still use it in my life today. Like there's a lot of subjects in high school I had perfectly great teachers, but I don't think about it or remember it. I remember everything I learned in her class. And like that's a Saturn teacher. Right? It's like, I'm not letting you get away with anything. I'm going to make you respect yourself. I'm going to make you respect the beauty of this work. And and eventually you come through it in a whole new way. And you've really again, I felt like at that point in my life, I up levels. Like it was just, that's always sticks out to me as a Saturn, especially, poetry, Saturn, Pisces.
All I can think is that teacher has Capricorn in her chart somewhere. I mean, of course she has Capricorn in her chart somewhere, but I'm talking heavy Cap.
I'm seeing lots of stelliums in Capricorn, Aquarius.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that. Yeah.
As you were telling that story and you got to that sort of punchline, I don't think this is the work you want to do. It created like a physical reaction in me. I am so feeling this with Saturn in Pisces. I feel like, at least for me, that is part of the lesson here, right? And I think this is a good transition into our next sort of bucket, right? Because on November 27th, Saturn will station direct at 25 degrees of Pisces, right? And this is where we're moving forward, obviously, within the Pisces realm, but we're still here in Pisces. We're just looking toward Aries, and that new beginning. And I'm unraveling this only because I was so bummed, you guys, to see Saturn come back into Pisces, only because I thought I was free of my Saturn square. You know what I mean? But isn't it? So when you say that this isn't the work you want to do, I'm not talking about astrology, by the way, people. I love this work, right? But isn't that part of the journey, right? And learning, especially in sort of that, we're talking about the cycle of Saturn, and that is the process of a Saturn square transit, right? It's like refining the work you want to do and making sure that you are sort of able to get there. What is the creative process of unfolding that I'm looking to provide, right? And maybe now I'm talking too personally, but it's good to share personal stories, right? Like, it's just, it's really interesting, and I just love that story, Alex.
Yeah, it actually is funny because I recently, in the last 3 or 4 months, I've started doing Saturn specific readings, and the title of those readings is "The Work Only You Can Do." So I'm like, oh, this is a fun synchronicity.
Oh, everybody go book a Saturn reading.
Yeah, definitely.
Alexandra.
But I'm gonna also share my screen so you guys can see, because Whitney, you said, yes, I think the 27th or the 25th
27th.
When it stations. Yeah, so I just wanted to pull this up. I have the other aspects turned off just so people can see what this water trine looks like and why we keep saying this is the friendliest Saturn has been, because instead of this mess of a mutable Grand Cross situation that played out over a year, with Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn and Pisces, and then everything you had personally in Sagittarius or Virgo being afflicted by that, we actually have some of the most supportive astrology happening. Now, these trines kind of start in mid-October and they go all the way through mid-December, but there's a key moment here in November that Whitney's pointing out where Jupiter stations retrograde on, I think, November 11th, and then Saturn stations retrograde, and they hold this together. You can see at this point we have Mercury retrograding back already into Scorpio. We have Venus in late Scorpio. The Sun and Mars have already come through this water trine earlier in the year. So this is what that trine really looks like. And of course, at the same time, we have the trine from Pluto to Uranus. That's still kind of playing out, even though at that point Uranus will be back in Taurus. But this is really supportive work. And when we think about a grand trine, the triangle is notorious for being the strongest shape. Like no matter which side of this triangle you put pressure on it, it holds it. And trines are of the nature of Jupiter. They're amplifying, they're abundant. And so this is a time where you're getting a huge bang for your buck on the work you were meant to do. That's what this is here for you, with all of the support from an exalted Jupiter. At that point, we're going to have, Mars comes through and is dignified in Scorpio, dignifying the sun, and Mercury and Venus. It's very supportive astrology for that last bit of stuff that you need to do in Pisces, and probably like a pretty unique opportunity to even plant some small seeds around it that are going to have an outsized impact, honestly.
This is really beautiful too, because I just want, for those of you who really follow astrology, there were also grand water trines last year. So if you're getting a little shaky hearing that was Mars, Saturn, and Venus. That's a whole different type of feeling. Mars and Cancer particularly around it. This has, like you were saying, Alexandra, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, this sense of, if you will do the work you're supposed to do, if you will do that and you'll do it well. Jupiter and Cancer to me, I've been really thinking about this lately. I was just writing about it in my newsletter, about this sense of like, Cancer to me is about the infancy of something that has just come into the world, something that you have just birthed, that is still delicate, that is still requiring of your attention. But Jupiter is like, if you nurture Saturn's lesson, if you read the whole poem, people, just read the whole poem.
At minimum, Alex.
Right? At minimum, just read the whole poem. Know that there's a second page to the poem. You can just, it's not really that difficult to do. Jupiter there is really saying, like, whatever you have just has, come through creation into your life has all the components ready to go. It is well supported, well resourced. It is well nurtured, well cared for. It's just that Saturn's in a very loving, tough way, not going to let you get involved in your own bullshit if you're trying to bring something into the world well. Do it differently in a way that really brings you in, so you can take advantage of all those resources that are readily available for it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So good. And, isn't with this chart, well, the chart itself is beautiful, and the planets in the chart are beautiful, so beautifully configured. Isn't this looks like the creation of a story with a happy ending? I mean, look at this. We have, seriously though, we have Saturn and Neptune over there in Pisces. Let's not forget the fact that this is Venus's exaltation. Saturn is so close to Venus's exaltation degree, right? Obviously, with both Jupiter and Venus in the mix here, so dignifying this. It's just, this is like a story with a happy ending. I think it's so beautiful. I think it's also, this part of the zodiac, this part of Pisces has been such a hot area this year, right? This is also where Venus stationed direct back in April. I think that was 24 degrees, right? Mercury stationed direct right around here, 26 degrees, right? So it's this isn't anything new. This is what we've been working on and working toward. I think that part, because there's been so much planetary energy sort of poured into this part of the zodiac, it's really, really specific. You know what I mean? And then I also think about, because we're looking at the trine, Jupiter retrogrades, at 25 degrees Cancer. And that is right within, talking length with this, right? I'm picturing what are the string can phones, right? With the string, they're in talking distance. They're connected here, right? And so I think that's really important to mention too, because there's just because Saturn is involved doesn't mean once again that we're doomed. No, we're not doomed, I just one more sort of point on these water trines and sort of where this energy is in the last part of the zodiac, you guys know I love to work with the decans, right? And this is all happening in Pisces 3, which is signified by the 10 of Cups in the minor arcana of the tarot, excuse me. And isn't that just like, okay, first of all, it's a beautiful card. Oh, Alex is pulling it out. Why don't I keep mine on my desk? What the heck? And, you know, at least in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it is portrayed with this like beautiful, happy family under this rainbow. And it contributes to that sort of like happy ending, right? Yeah, oh, so beautiful. I love that. I'm like, what's in that cup? What's in that rainbow cup? Can I get a drink of that?
I know, right?
But
the magical unicorn drink.
Yes. And so what this is telling me is that, like, in this story too, yeah, we're talking a lot about endings and beginnings because this is the part of the zodiac that we're in, right? Like, this is a quintessential, like, the end is the beginning type of moment, right? Every new beginning is some other beginning's end, right? And I think that's really, really prevalent here. So do you guys want to say anything else about this beautiful water trine before we talk about Saturn entering Aries?
I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think it's something that's bleeding over from talking about Saturn in Libra, which we recorded earlier.
Which you will see next week.
Our time dilation is out of control today. No. Yeah, sorry.
Earlier the same day.
Yeah. Our time dilation, we're out of control, you guys. We need to be stopped. But thinking about Saturn being in domicile in Aquarius, which is an air sign, being exalted in Libra, which is an air sign, and moving in this part of 2025 from these grand air trines to the grand water trines, all of the outer planets are activated at this time. I don't have all the aspects on my screen, but really all of the outer planets are in play. It's pretty interesting interplay between water and air, and between intellect and feeling, and between conceptual cerebral stuff and the sort of like visceral soft body animal human stuff here on Earth that I think is going to be going on at that time. And I think it shifts pretty dramatically when Saturn comes into Aries and it moves into like a very different space. We've all felt that with Saturn and Aries. But yeah, leading us up there is like, enjoy these things while you can, and not in an ominous way, but just like Saturn is in a really sweet spot right now and being very kind, and we should try to take advantage of that if we can, because it just doesn't feel as good in Aries. No, really.
It doesn't. But hell yes to that point of really making this time count, because on February 13th, Saturn, is it the 13th or the 14th, you guys? I keep hearing different
It's the 13th.
Okay.
I double checked.
Okay, I heard another.
It's like one of those like where it's at midnight.
Yes,
thing,
of course.
you know?
Okay, well,
yeah.
February 13th, good. Yes, accuracy is important around here. February 13th, Saturn re-enters Aries. We've obviously been here before. When that happens, we are on the precipice of this impending Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. And so if I'm going to go back to that birth metaphor again, because Alexandra, you already said it, right? Like, Saturn in Aries is not the kindest, best feeling in the whole world. Like, we know that. We've already felt the beginnings of it, right? And if I go back to that birth metaphor, it's really like we are birthed into the world. We are coming out of the womb. And what does a baby do when they are birthed into the world? The first thing they do is, yes, scream their freaking heads off, because this place freaking sucks. What is going on out here? It's cold, it's drafty, like, what? And so I think we'll definitely sort of get this feeling, and something we talk about with Saturn and Neptune is this sort of disillusionment, right? And I certainly don't want to leave on any sort of negative note here, but there is this way that, this sort of new beginning, we may have carried some of that sort of disillusionment with us or we may be disillusioned by what this new beginning is, right? And so there is sort of a reckoning here that happens where, like, once again, we're confronted with real obstacles, right? Like, they were imagined before in the land of Pisces, and now those obstacles are real. And so it's, as Saturn presents, it's a good challenge for us to sort of level set our expectations, right? And recalibrate a little bit. What are you guys feeling when Saturn re-enters Aries in February?
I think Saturn at this entry moment actually has a lot of good support with Mars in a Saturn ruled sign. Saturn in Mars' sign, it's like, okay. Like the moon in Capricorn, not my favorite, but like we've got Jupiter over there providing a benefic opposition, frankly, from Cancer. Mm-hmm. I think there's more support at this outset, but it gets pretty weird pretty fast. And I've gone through the whole Saturn and Aries period, so I don't think there's anything in there that looks terrifying. But February is the first eclipse in Aquarius of that season, of that series. It's another eclipse in Virgo. We've got some crazy awesome stuff happening in Capricorn in January, and then we've got this, and it's just really interesting. I think Saturn in Aries is so dry. To me, it's like a bone dry desert. So to go from like Saturn in this kind of like lush, supportive water trine to move forward into the bone dry desert of Aries, and a place where it's kind of like in exile. It's a maverick, it's an outsider, it's an outlaw sometimes. It feels like kind of like a new world. And I think that's represented symbolically in this very powerful conjunction that happens at 0 degrees Aries at the beginning of the zodiac with Saturn and Neptune, who have a 36-year cycle. And as far as anyone researching it can see, have never actually conjoined at 0 degrees Aries. So we have a pretty powerful symbolic new beginning for me in February that I'm eyeing. And I have a total humility and sense of excitement and mystery about it. Like, I can't wait to see what it's going to be like. It looks kinder on this day and this week than it could be, but it's bone dry for me. It's a desert up there. What do you think, Alex?
I'm going to try to say this delicately. If you don't cut the crap in Pisces for the next 4 months, the crap is going to be cut in Aries when Saturn hits Neptune. It's a very especially with Mars and Aquarius ruling that entrance, right? There's a very no nonsense feeling to this, and I think that one of the things I have not by any means done an extensive study of Saturn Neptune conjunctions or Saturn Neptune hard aspects, but in the ones that I have looked at, there's often a kind of feeling of a breaking of a spell during these conjunctions. It's usually the Saturn Neptune application. There's some kind of breakdown of polarity. There's a breakdown of reality. There's a breakdown of like what's actually going on and what's actually real. And when Saturn hits Neptune, it's a little bit like everybody goes, whoa, 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 what just happened? And it's not necessarily on the day of the conjunction. These outer planetary aspects sometimes go on for years. But there's something to me here about, I always talk about Aries from Liz Green's point of view, which I really find applies to the sign, is the reclamation of things that were stolen from you, that are rightfully yours. And there's something here about Saturn hitting Neptune where it's just come out of this watery dance in Pisces, just like, I've got my feelings all sorted out. I've done this really wonderful artistic creative vision. It's like, and now I'm going to learn how to be powerful. And now I'm going to learn how to be powerful in a way that's disciplined, in a way that's mature, in a way that is no nonsense. And that kind of breaks, the Neptunian fog that can sometimes be hanging over things. It kind of cuts through that. But I think what Neptune does for Saturn in a softening aspect is Neptune reminds us that, once you get your polarity back, that doesn't mean you have to go to extremes that like this is really right and this is really wrong. We're all still part of the same family. We're all still part of the same consciousness. We're all still part of the same compassionate circle. And just because you break a spell or an illusion about how you may have seen something doesn't mean that then there's a rigid right and rigid wrong only. And so I maybe it's my hyper optimistic Sagittarius, but I don't see all doom and gloom for this. It's not an easy time by any means, Saturn Neptune times, but usually what I've seen just experientially is when the conjunction or the square or whatever the opposition perfects, there's usually some kind of return to a more grounded sense. That's just something I've observed.
I'm a hyper optimist too, Alex.
Okay.
Let's
just be hyper optimistic together, because
you're in good company here at this positivity bubble.
Totally.
Alexandra too, of course.
I think there are positive ways to look at it too. I mean, I think the way that I've been talking to clients about it is like another way to spin those same keywords that you said is dream architecture. And I've been thinking about like Inception, where they're literally building reality around them. They're saying, hey, we're not a part of your reality, like that Saturn in Aries. Like, we're not part of you. We're doing our own thing and we're building our own thing, and it's built on dreams. And I think it's totally possible for people to harness it that way. It really depends on if you finish up that work with Saturn and Pisces. I mean, are you going to carry that work over to the next part of your Saturn cycle? You won't be happy. We're all telling you right now. Or you can handle it and you can carry that optimism over and just say like, hey, now I have the backbone. I love the way you said that, even just your demeanor. Like, now I'm going to learn how to be powerful. You got to like work through it to get there.
Quickly, I just want to say quickly, like based on, is that okay? Just to go in quickly. All right. Is that, it sounds very, like you're saying, Alexandra, it sounds very ominous, but one way I would see this for myself, like if I'm looking at this for myself and thinking about, obviously we're thinking about this for ourselves, is what's the choice I always make that I know is coloring outside the lines, is not actually in integrity with myself? What's the choice that I tend towards because it feels a little bit easier in the moment? And, it's okay if you don't get it all right. It's just looking for where can I even... I think Saturn even rewards those tiny shifts. Like, where I normally would have done this, I do this. And that immediately starts sending you in a new direction. It's just that Saturn in Aries is much more no nonsense, even for Saturn. It's a very sort of like power, like now it is time for power. Now it is time for individualization.
Time to check 48 Laws of Power out on Libby.
Yeah. And so like, just watch over the next 4 months. Like, where am I trying to squirm around where I don't need to squirm around? I need to take the not fun choice, but that brings me just even a small little shift can make a huge difference with these choices.
And there's this sense that there is always with Saturn, is that it's like the sustained lesson, right? It's not going to be in like an immediate gratification sort of anything. I mean, even if it's the opposite of gratification, it's not going to be immediate, right? And so there's this way with Saturn and Neptune conjoining in Aries that we are asked to like burn through the fire, you know what I mean? Like, we need to be prepared with that sort of like resilience inside of us. I was thinking of like the act of swordsmithing, right? Like how that could be a good metaphor for what we're talking about here, right? Because that steel is made stronger when it's plunged into water, right? And that Saturn moving back into Pisces to, sort of create this or make sure that we have this sort of strength within us, right? And then we are asked to, with that new sword, continue to sort of burn through the fire. And I think some of the sort of the dry desert keywords you were using, Alexandra, are so that like desert journey. I think that, like you said, this is probably what is in store with Saturn in Aries for the next couple of years, right? And so on that hyper optimistic note, right, isn't the lesson then how we learn to reinvigorate our desires, to rehydrate the dryness, right? And move forward in a more balanced manner. That's what I'm seeing. Is there anything you both want to sort of leave us with in closing?
Yeah, I think there actually is quite a bit of optimism about this Saturn and Aries transit, specifically because Jupiter is forming this nonstop trine. I mean, even once Jupiter gets into Leo, there's like a period in 2026 and 2027 where there's like crazy trines. There's a Mars retrograde that goes from Virgo back to Leo, and it just like keeps this trine alive all summer of trines, of fire trines. So it's almost like on the other side of this, if you can get through this, I like the way I'll quote Liz Green back at us and say, like, I like the way that Liz Green talks about Saturn's activity in the fire signs and how like Saturn in the fire signs can reveal a sort of spiritual constipation and a constipation around purpose. And the fire signs are signs that don't need any justification for how they feel and who they are. They just are. They just blaze out like that. So the idea that Jupiter is going to be there supporting and, you know, that there's going to be some development, I think a lot of people at this time in our cultural moment are feeling dried out, are feeling like a lack of energy. I just hear all the time from people, I'm so tired, I'm so tired. And I think that's kind of one optimistic thing we can look at is like, you know, I can't make you less tired, right? But I can make you feel more excited about your life in a way that makes you feel like you have way more energy and more bottomless sense of vitality. That is what's going to happen if you can, you know, throw yourself into this Saturn work. Read both pages of the poem, maybe come up with some original thoughts about the poem. I don't know. Try your best. What do you think, Alex?
I don't know. Like John, he's cool, and he wrote a really nice poem. I love nightingales. Nightingales are amazing.
I see you doing that. Totally.
I mean, I kind of got away with it in some classes, but you know, but that, you know, that phrase she said, you know, I don't think this is the work you want to do. What that's saying is like, you're better than this. You know more than this. You're more powerful than this. You're more capable than this. And if I'm really honest, that was coming from a place where I'm not sure if I know what to do with this. I'm not sure if I understand this material, if I'm going to be smart enough, right? It comes from that sort of feeling that I don't know enough. You know, I'm deficient in some way. And she's saying, no, you do. Just do it. You know, think about it. That's all you have to do. And I think that that's the moral of the story here for me is Saturn in Aries to me is like, it's going to show you what you're capable of, that you're strong, that you're, you know, and you know, I think of like back, the last time Saturn was in Aries was the late 90s. I think it was 1997 through 1999. And that's when like movies like, what was it, Armageddon and like Deep Impact came out. Now, I'm not saying a giant asteroid's going to crash into the Earth before someone starts panic commenting. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, in both of those stories, it was kind of heroes you wouldn't consider to be heroes, like everyday people who do something extraordinary, who do something really, really hard. And there's a sort of heroic function to that, right? And I think there was a lot of that type of stuff in the late 90s. It just felt like you're capable, you're strong, you're powerful. And this is about taking back that power, but authentically, not by cutting corners, but authentically being really secured inside of yourself. That's what I think these next 4 months lead us towards.
Drop that mic. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful, optimistic place to leave it here for Saturn's last dance in Pisces and entrance into Aries. Now, let's see. Alexandra, where can we all find you?
Yes, you can find me at the number 9 Lives Astrology. That is my website, 9livesastrology.com. That's my Instagram. And that's also me on YouTube. I have videos coming out every week with breakdowns of the transits. And I also have some fun, cool new videos that are coming out. You'll have to stay tuned for that. But you can book a Saturn reading with me, the work only you can do, the work you want to do. And I also have a nice presentation about Saturn and Aries that I did with a very talented peer, Sarah Posh. And I'll comment a link to that in the comments if it'll let me. But you can definitely find it on my socials.
You can find me at www.alexamorosi.com. You can book readings with me there, intuitive or astrological. You can also book energy work with me there. I actually use energy work in conjunction with charts all the time because charts are representing different symphonies and frequencies of energy. So there's a lot of work that I do around charts. If you're not sure which of my services, because there are a lot on there, you need or would be best for you, can book a free 15-minute call with me, and we'll just kind of suss out what would be the best thing for you, the most efficient and best work for you to do. That's where you can find me. Oh, and Substack. Oh my God, I keep forgetting the Substack because I'm on Substack. I'm actually writing my newsletter right now. Jesus, I'm on Substack at The Subtle Universe. I do a twice a month free newsletter for free subscribers on the new and full moon. I have various levels of subscription too, where I do video content and weekly updates and weekly astrological updates and energy updates. So I have that too at Substack at The Subtle Universe.
You both are so freaking amazing and talented with all of your offers,
You're
and I can't believe I get to work here with you guys.
I know. It's so much fun. I just love you guys.
Well, on that note, you can find my readings available at astroarcana.com. That's Arcana, Arcana. And you can also find me here on YouTube at astro.arcana.astrology, where I provide updates every other week on the current lunations. So also I want you to connect with me over on Instagram as well. That's the same place, astro.arcana. Whoa, I almost said .com. Where do we live? astro.arcana.astrology. And with that, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Adam and Nightlight for letting us be here on this wonderful weekend wisdom series. And we will see you all next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.